Hello everybody, welcome to this video. In this video, we are going to have some exercises related to our lesson of intonation. As we learned, intonation is the rise and fall of the pitch, which we use to add clarity to what we want to communicate with our listener. There is an exercise here. In this exercise, you see a dialogue between a teacher and a student. They have used mostly like one-word sentences, but it is the tone choice that gives much meaning to this conversation. Take your time and guess what the tone choices are over these words. Well, first let's discuss the tone choices and then we read the whole conversation. The first one is finished with a rising intonation. And rising intonation shows yes no question. It means the speaker expects answer from the interlocutor. And the interlocutor, who is a student here, answers almost, almost, with a falling intonation. And falling intonation shows certainty. It means certainly it is almost done. Then the teacher asks another question. 5 minutes with a rising intonation, meaning that you tell me whether you need 5 minutes or not. And then the students can answer with two tone choices. The first one is a falling intonation. No. The second one, which takes a rising and falling intonation, shows surprise. No. No. Then the teacher continues with a WH question. When? If you remember, WH questions, similar to the statements, take falling intonation. And at the end, the student answers later. It means I need time more than 5 minutes. Well, let's read the whole conversation. Finished? Almost. 5 minutes? No. When? Later. Let's do it again. Finished? Almost. 5 minutes? No. When? Later. Another thing that we learned was intonation with a list of items. These items can be single words, they can be phrases, or sentences. Whatever the items are, every item takes a rising intonation in a statement. The last item takes a falling intonation. Each rising intonation is cueing the message that the speaker wants to continue talking. Well, there is an example provided here. Take your time, read the example, and when you're ready, we read it together. Well, let's read it together. Before registration, you need to provide proof of vaccination, proof of insurance, and your advisor's confirmation. Let's do it again. Before registration, you need to provide proof of vaccination, proof of insurance, and your advisor's confirmation. Well, let's do another exercise of intonation with a list of items. In this slide, you see that the items are longer than the previous slide. So, first go ahead Take your time, read the whole sentence, and then we read it together. Well, let's read it together. For scientific paper submission, you should prepare your paper, select an appropriate publication outlet, read the aims, scope, and author guidelines of your target journal, and submit the cover letter with the manuscript. Let's do it again. For scientific paper submission, you should prepare your paper, select an appropriate publication outlet, read the aims, scope, and author guidelines of your target journal, and submit the cover letter with the manuscript. Well, as you noticed, the first rising intonation is on the word submission because the speaker wants to tell the listener that he is not yet done with his speech. And the first item ends up with the content word paper. Similarly, the words outlet and journal take rising intonation. And at the end, manuscript, which is the last content word of the whole statement, takes a falling intonation. Another thing that we learned in our intonation video was that a speaker can break up his or her speech into some digestible parts of speech that are called thought groups. Thought groups are beneficial for both the speaker and the listener because they help listeners organize meaning and grasp the ideas. They provide vital pausing spaces for speakers to gather their thoughts before continuing, and they allow the speakers breathing points to facilitate a constant stream of speech. Well, there is a long conversation here. Take your time and read the lines. Then we will go and discuss the thought groups on every single line of this conversation. Well, let's read it first and then we discuss the tone choices. Hi, Professor Taylor. Hi, Jack. I was hoping I could talk with you for a few minutes. It's about the test. Oh, okay. Well, I've never taken an open book test, and I just don't know what to expect. Does that mean I can use my book during the test as a reference? Well, so I have provided some different colors over the phrases so that it is easier for us to see how the tone choices are working. The first one, I was hoping it takes rising intonation or rising tone because it is a verb phrase, was hoping. The second one, it takes rising, let's say rising tone because it is a clause, non-clause. And the third one, the green one, it takes a falling tone because it is the end of the statement. It's about the test. Uh, I have not provided any falling arrow, but it takes falling intonation because it is the end of the statement. And then the line for the student, the first phrase is I've never taken. This is a verb phrase. An open book test, this is a phrase. Or let's say a noun phrase. And the green one, and I just don't know, again, it is a verb phrase. The blue one, what to expect, it is a short form of noun clause. And does that mean it is a verb phrase? The yellow one, I can use my book. This is a noun clause. During the test, it is preposition phrase, and as a reference is a preposition phrase, but since it is at the end of this yes/no question, it takes a rising intonation. Well, you can get back to the intonation video and see some of the rules for distinguishing the thought groups. We learned that prepositional phrases, verb phrases, and clauses, and other sentence structures can be categorized among thought groups. Good. Well, first let's read it together. Exactly. And you can use your notes and the handouts too. Really? Yes. But Jack, since you've never taken an open book test, I should warn you. It isn't as easy as it seems. Well, so the first line begins with exactly and the falling intonation because falling intonation is showing certainty. The green one, and you can use, is a verb phrase, auxiliary plus verb. So it takes a rising intonation. The blue one is actually noun phrase, but since it is the end of the statement, it takes a falling intonation. The student line, really? So this is a yes/no question. And then the professor begins with yes and falling intonation, which shows certainty. Then on the blue one, but Jack, the professor uses a rising tone because he wants to tell the student that his speech is not yet done and he wants to continue. The green one is an adverbial clause, so this thought group takes a rising intonation. The purple one, I should warn you, it is a short statement, so it takes a falling intonation, and for the same reason, the last green thought group takes a falling intonation.